There are a number of reasons that can be talked about there, and we'll go into one area in particular. But before we do that, I just want to update you on one of the key things, which is the lack of women in the venture capital industry, which also plays a role, because oftentimes that whole fund management industry is described as being pale, male, and stale. And it's very true. So going back to that data from the British Business Bank, the report in 2019, they found that in the UK, just 13% of the senior management roles in investment teams were filled by women, and that 48% of venture capital funds didn't have any women in them. Harvard Business Review did a similar study over a much longer period of time. They looked at venture capital firms in the United States between 1990 and 2018. And they found that the percentage of female investors across that 28-year period was relatively steady on about 8%, lower than it is in the UK. Interestingly, 3/4 of US VC firms did not have ever a female member of their investment teams. So the situation on this side of the Atlantic is better in that regard than it is on the other side of the Atlantic. But in either case, there's still a long way to go, and there's still a lot of improvements that need to be made. And one of the key things that also gets talked about is, well, where's the evidence that female founders are a better investment? There is ample evidence. There was the Alison Rose review that came out in 2019, which found that the UK economy would add 10% of its GDP, £250 billion, would be added to the UK economy if women started and were funded in their businesses at the same rate as men. And then there was another report published in the United States by Boston Consulting Group that looked at 400 different successfully funded firms over a period of several years. And they found that for every dollar invested, female founders generated 2.5 times as much revenue per dollar as male founders. 2.5 times as much. That's huge. And yet still the money is not flowing. So that's the bad news. And I always like to get the bad news out of the way up front, because we all know about it. It's the elephant in the room. So let's acknowledge it. Let's talk about it. But now let's move on, because